It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Tzvi Cohen. We're here in your beautiful home in Kibbutz Ma'abarot in Israel. And Tzvi, I'm so grateful to you. If you could tell us a little bit about your most unbelievable and incredible life story. You were born in Germany, but if you could just elaborate and let us know a little bit about your family and your story.
Okay, so I was born 92 years ago in Berlin as a Jew with the name Horst Cohen, a completely German name. My parents were not Zionists and were not religious, and I got a complete German education. And I thought that I am German. But very soon I figured out that I'm not a real German, that I am a Jew, and I didn't understand what it does mean to be a Jew. What does it mean? There was every German child at age 10 had to go to the Hitlerjugend, and every German girl at age 10 had to go to the Union of the German Girls, and they all were in uniforms. And when I came out on the street, they waited for me with, how do you call?
A whip.
With a whip. And they whipped me until I was lying completely bled on the street. And I cried and I said, "Why do you hit me? What I have done to you?" And they said, "Because you are a Jew. And the Jew is the enemy of the German people. And by the way, you crucified Jesus." I said, "It's not my fault. I have no contact to this at all. Not my parents, not my grandparents." And everything... I was 1.5 years old when Hitler came to rule, in 1933, and all my childhood I suffered under Hitler, because when the Nuremberg rules came out, everything was forbidden for me. I couldn't go not to the cinema, not to the theater, and not to a restaurant, and I couldn't sit on a bench. I couldn't travel. It was allowed to travel. Nothing. And I was very afraid. Then they gave out the order that everyone who tries to keep a hand against a person in uniform, he will get a punishment. And when I was so afraid to go out, I told my father to go with me on the street. And when we came out, they waited for me with the wipes, and they did the same again. And my father stood by side and couldn't do anything. So my feeling, because my father is my hero, and his feeling to see that he cannot do nothing. So I still have the wounds from the whips they hit me and so on. And later on, when in 1941 the Yellow Star came out, I decided not to leave the apartment anymore at all. So I was sitting almost 2 years in our apartment in the highest story, and the Jews, it was forbidden to go by alarms, when the flyers came, when the bombardment, it was forbidden to go to the shelter. So we sat, I was mostly alone in the upper store. My parents should work for the German, and I was very afraid. But most of the time I was alone, and They took everything. I had an aquarium with fish. I had a cage with birds. They took away my little piano. They took away my guitar. They left a mouth harmonica. Why, I don't know. And because my mother was born in Berlin, she taught me all the German folk songs, and 2 years alone in the apartment, so I could learn to play on the harmonica. And they took us also our telephone and our radio but all the German neighbors had very loud loudspeakers, because the German all the time win. They win, and I could hear the marches, and I learned to play them on the harmonica. And I learned all the German folk songs. And in February 1943, there was a big fight in Stalingrad. The German stand in front of Moscow and couldn't come in like Napoleon. And Leningrad was under siege for 3 years. And Hitler was sure that when he will take Stalingrad, because it means that this is how you call the power of Stalin. Anyhow, the fight was for 5 months, and 2 million soldiers died in this fight. 800,000 German and 1.2 million Russian soldiers. But General Paulus, with the army of 300,000 German soldiers, fought there. And the last day Hitler told him, he raised him to the highest charge in the military and said, you have to fight until the last bullet. But he gave up and went with 91,000 German soldiers and kept in Russia. And since then they began to play death marches in the radio, and I heard it, I learned it also, to play it on the harmonica. And you know that in 42 they started to take out the Jews of the apartments in the middle of the night, SS people, and threw them the steps down, and downstairs there were people, they took them and threw them on the car. And I knew that one day they will come, but my fear was that when I'm alone, I will not survive. And my parents were not at home at the very same day that they came to me, on the 7th of May 1943. I was in the apartment after all the bombardments and very feared. And when I see them coming in, I got very, very, very scared, because I saw the boots up to here, and the green bridges, and here was written for every soldier in German, Gott mit uns, Gott with us, and every German soldier. And then when I saw the likeness of the SS here, and then suddenly I saw on the cap the dead head with the crossing, I began to cry, Nora, suddenly. And then he said, pack your things, you must go. And I cried. I said, I will not go without my parents. And he said, pack your things. And when I tried to put in my mouth harmonica, Then he asked me, what is it? And I said, it's a harmonica, crying. And he said, what you are doing with it? Question. And I said, I play, but all I'm crying, and he gave me order, play. Or if you don't follow the order of the SS, you get a bullet in your head. And then what can I play for him? Because I listened to the death marches after the Stalingrad fight, and I remembered a song what was written about a dear member that a soldier went with his friend. They went to fight, and suddenly a bullet came, and he asked, is it for him or is it for me? It was for him, and he fell, and he couldn't fight anymore, and then he said, farewell, my best comrade. And I remembered the melody, and I started crying to play this melody. He stood so, and I could see a tear in his eye. And he said to the other man, this little Jew knows to play. Play another song. So I felt already that maybe that I reached him, and what I'm playing now. And then I remembered the song of Marlene Dietrich, of the Blue Angel, in the movie The Blue Angel, Lili Marlene. And Marlene Dietrich, she was a German actor, but she hates Hitler, and she left and went to England, and there he taught the English army this song, because the German army marched with this song of Lili Marlene, but the English army went also with the same song in English. So I played this song. Then he said, play again. Then I said, the little Jew, under one condition. He said, what is your condition? Then I told him that in our house there lives a barkeeper, a shopper. My grandfather went over there 28 years every morning to get raised his face. And he was the only German people in this house what said to me, when you are in trouble, you can telephone from me. So I told him I want to go down. He said, okay. The other one wanted to go behind me. He will not escape, don't worry about. I reached him, and I called my father. I told him that they're here. And he told me, keep them. I said, how? Keep them. I went up the 4 stories to the The two people were sitting on my kitchen table. They took off the hat, and I saw two young men, blonde hair, blue eyes, and they sat at my table, and they got me sit down and play. So I was playing the harmonica, all the repertoire of all of the German folk songs I was playing, and they were singing. It took 1.5 hours until my father found mother, and they both came, and from downstairs they heard also singing and playing, and in this time they didn't play and sing. She came in, and then they jumped up and they with their hands. And could we help you? My mother said, yes, please help us to take the things down. They didn't throw us the stairs down. They helped my father on the car, my mother, and they took me and put me, I was 12 years old, on the car, and they said, farewell. So I say that harmonica saved my life. And the full story is that we three went together to Theresienstadt, and we got free after 2 years from Theresienstadt, and we came to Palestine. And here in Palestine, my brother was born, and I live here already 78 years. My biggest victory about the Nazis was not that we came free out of the camp. It was that my brother was born here in Israel, a new free generation, and it was even before the state was. It means that he has a birth certificate as a Palestinian, because that was a British mandate here. And I have an identity card as a Palestinian. And only in 1948 we became a state.
Tzvi, can I ask you, it's unbelievable. You have a picture of your grandfather, and if you could show us the picture, it's a very special picture of your grandparents with your mother.
At first, I will show this picture of my grandparents who died in Theresienstadt, were cemetered, and I had to throw their ashes into the river Eger, what goes close by Theresienstadt. And I put my hand in the water and I said them goodbye. And the ashes went in the Eger went to the Elbe, and the Elbe went to the oceans, and all the oceans go around, and all the ashes go around all the time. And 45 years later, on the same place stand Václav Havel, the president of Czechoslovakia, and Ezer Weizmann, the president of Israel, and put roses with candles in the water on the same place to remember what happened there.
And your grandfather, he's in the picture.
He's
on the right.
Here on the left is my grandfather, and on the right is my grandmother. Their ashes I threw into the water, and in the middle is my mother with her brothers and sisters, and my cousin and his mother.
And this was taken in Berlin
It was
in
taken in
29.
Berlin in 1929, 2 years before I was born.
And so you have a picture also of in Berlin with you, and many years later you went back to Berlin. It's such a picture of the book that you wrote.
This picture of my book. Here, this is my book in Hebrew. I went to this place in 1936 on my way on Rosh Hashanah to the main Beit Knesset in the Oranienburger Street. And I have a German friend, and when he saw the picture of my book, he said, I know where this place is. Let us go to the place and take a picture of this place. So 82 years later, I came to the same place exactly on Yom Rosh Hashanah. Then we took this picture here.
So nice, sure. And Tzvi, can I ask you, having been in Berlin, I'm sure your memories, what is the very first recollections that you have of growing up? Your very first memories?
About what?
Growing up. What do you remember, your first memories as a child?
I cannot say that I have had a childhood, because I was always under the pressure of the Nazis. Living in Berlin, I couldn't go to the German school, I had to go to a Jewish school, and I told you what happened when I went out of the street. They were waiting for me to hit me, so I always had to wait until they went to school, and so I came later to school.
Did you ever go to a German kindergarten?
Never. I never had a non-Jewish friend.
And in your apartment or in your building?
In our apartment we were living only two Jews, my grandfather in the first store and we in the fourth for the up store. And then they threw out my grandfather from this place. And in 38, and the 9th of November 38, they took him to Sachsenhausen.
This was your grandfather. He received the Iron Cross and he fought in the First World War.
And my mother figured out that in the German law was a paragraph written that people over 65 cannot be on a work camp, so they called the concentration of students, and she went to the highest policeman in Berlin and showed him this article, and then they released my grandfather, and I couldn't remember him because he was very skinny and he cried. They hit my head, my legs. It was terrible, really terrible. And the same grandfather, later I figured out that he was in Theresienstadt, and I was with him a few hours before he died, and my grandmother died. They both died on the same day without to know each from the other. And because in Theresienstadt there was I forgot the name, where they burned the people.
A crematorium.
A crematorium, yes. And there were 4 stoves, and they were on the same day cremated. It takes about, it's a temperature about 2,500 degrees. And it takes about 17 minutes, and it's only ash, no teeth, no bones, only ash. And the Jew has to take out the ash and to put in little boxes, very little grey boxes, and to put a label on the name of the people who were born and were died. And later on, when at the end, it was mostly at the end of 1944, I, with other children, get the order to take 22,000 boxes to put them out, and I found in the letter H, 2 boxes, one beside the other, and one was with Esther Heller, my grandmother, and Gustav Heller, my grandfather. So then I took them, my grandfather on the one hand and grandmother on the other hand, and all the other kids, they laughed, because death was the most normal thing in Theresienstadt. And then I brought the boxes, so we went out, we had to put the boxes on wagons, I kept them. And then we went 100 meters, and there's the river Eger, and there we got the order to push it in the river. So I pushed the ash of my grandfather and my grandmother in the water. I put the hand in. This was the way.
It must have been so emotionally difficult, so
sure,
incredibly difficult.
Anyhow, I was happy because I buried them. I know where I buried them, and every time when I came with groups to Theresienstadt, I went to this place, but it's my graveyard. So,
and Tzvi, can I ask you, when you were taken on the tracks, when the Germans put your parents and you, and thank God you were together with your parents, because if you would have been by yourself, you wouldn't have survived.
So that is the reason that my book, what I wrote the most harmonica saved our lives. This is the name of my Hebrew and my German book.
And what happened when you came to Theresienstadt?
Hmm?
What happened when you came to Theresienstadt?
Oh, in Theresienstadt, you know, that 35,000 people died in Theresienstadt from hunger. The German didn't kill in Theresienstadt people. They didn't shoot them, they didn't hang them. They didn't give them to eat. They let them die, simply die. And they were with white hands, clean hands. And another thing was that the German gave order to the Jewish Ältestenrat, that was, to make a list of Jews to the transport. So not the German makes the list, the Jews makes the list. So it means that the Jews send the Jews to death. They didn't know that it's death, but they know that it's not good. So the German could stay there clean. They didn't kill people. The Jews died by themselves, nothing. And they didn't send people to the east. They did the Jews. So that's the story about it. And then they ordered Red Cross mission to see the conditions in Theresienstadt, and the part where they went through, they made clean and everything, the biggest bluff. In Theresienstadt we were separated, men and women, but children until 13, and I was only 12, could go to the men and could go to the women. So I figured out where my father is. You know, In Theresienstadt there are 7 big barracks, because it was a city of soldiers. Usually there were living 7,000 people in this place, and when we were in, the most were when we were 16,000, not 60,000 people there. It was very overcrowded, and the main thing was that we were looking for food because we were hungry all the time. So we eat everything what was eatable. We get a quarter of a bread for 3 days. That means altogether 1 slice of bread a day. And we were always hungry. So what kept us all the time thinking is how to find something to eat and how not to go on a transport to the east. Later on, and the living conditions were terrible, and on the first day when I waked up in the morning, I had to carry 12 corpse people, dead people, to put them on a wagon, one with the head in this direction, the other direction, and to put them, they were naked. And people are not dying naked, but because we had no other clothes. So we took from the dead the shoes and the socks and the underwear and everything. And because there were no toilets in the barracks, there were only latrines, and sometimes it were closed, so many people had no choice because they had diarrhea and they make in their pants. And this was the reason that they could change their dirty clothes from those dead people. Yeah? And later those people were brought to the crematorium, and the story of the crematorium you know already.
Did you have to work in the crematorium?
No, never. I had to collect the corpse and to put them on the wagon and to bring them to some place and then to pour them on the floor. And later they took to the crematorium, and but there was another thing. The German didn't want that there will be a revolt or something like that. So all the most famous Jewish people from Central Europe were brought to Theresienstadt. So you had some directors and composers and drawers and artists and everything. So we had culture in Theresienstadt. The culture was our weapon against the German. And there were concerts in Theresienstadt, and there were lectures in Theresienstadt, and there were performances in Theresienstadt. This was our weapon against the German.
Do you remember the concerts? Do you remember the music or concerts?
I remember there was an opera for children that I took a part in this on my mouth harmonica. Every child who was in Theresienstadt, and there were 15,000, they went through Theresienstadt. So the Brundibar, the children opera, and the children opera spoke about the victory of the good against the evil. And the German didn't understand that it means that the man he symbolized, the player, it was Hitler. And they didn't understand that all the story is against Hitler, but they allowed it. And so it was 55 times between 43 and 44 it was arranged in Theresienstadt. Now, from those 50,000 children went through Theresienstadt, and the 8th of May 1945 were alive 150. And I am one of those.
150?
Yes.
It's such a small percentage, minuscule.
So, and now the most interesting thing is that at the 4th of February 1945, 3 months before the end of the war, came an order from the SS, not from the Jews, to volunteer to a transport to Switzerland. There were many people, but the commander chose 2 yes, who no. My father, my mother, and me went through, and we came in the train, and the train was on the way to Switzerland. 1,200 Jews from Theresienstadt went in a train and traveled to Switzerland. And after we started at 2 or 3 hours again, the SS gave us full bread. And the next day they gave an order to take off the Judenstern, and we knew that to take it off you get a bullet in your head, but that it's the order. So until we could take it down, it cost a lot of time, but later on, after 4 years, here the color of the material was different, and you could see a 6 star on everything of the clothes of you. And we traveled through in regular wagons, not of kettles, and we traveled through the destroyed Germany, and I felt such a nekuma in my heart to see all this. And suddenly, after total dark in Germany, we saw a lot of lights, and then we understood that this is Switzerland. Oi. And suddenly, at night, we stood in front of the lights, and the locomotive left the train. We stood only the wagons, and then I thought, because I knew the story of the Bible, that when Moses was standing on the Mount of Nebo, God said to him, "This is a promised land, but you will not enter it." So I thought the Germans are making us the same thing, to show us that this is Switzerland, and then they will kill us. And then the locomotive went to the other end of the train, and we began traveling back. And I thought, now they are going to killing us, but we didn't know that the German locomotive couldn't go to Switzerland. So he took us through another train, and then he pushed us into Switzerland. And then a Swiss locomotive put on, and the German left, and we went into Switzerland. Then I opened the window, and I got a hit on the head. Chocolate. And I wanted to eat it, to take it, and my father gave me a clap on my hand, like, one piece only. One piece only. Now from the 1,200 people who went into Switzerland, died 300 people within 1 month with a stomach. Because of the hunger, it was very, very, very small. And you should learn to eat. Slowly, slowly begin. Because we were not used to eat.
It's amazing that your father knew this, because a lot of people overate and they died from exactly what you said.
Yes, so he saved me and so on. And then we came in a wonderful place in Switzerland, but we were under curfew, closed for quarantine for 6 weeks.
Which town did you come to? Do you remember?
We were divided, 1,200 people, into 3 groups. Every group 400 people, and every group came to another place, and we came to Engelberg. It's a wonderful place.
And you were together with your parents?
All the time together with my parents. This was what kept me, because of my mother. She all the time told me, you must overcome. You must overcome. So she helped me, even in the hardest time, when the hunger was really, really very hard. I can tell you that I found a boy from the Vienna choir, and I went with him to the barracks. I played on the harmonica and he was singing, and people came down, and we stand with a hat here, and they put a little piece of bread in this. So what we get at once, in one performance, we get 10 times more than the ration what we have get of bread. And this was a part what saved our life. Yes.
And Tzvi, can I ask, in Theresienstadt, what did you do during the days? What could you do?
You must know that in Theresienstadt there were 90% Jews from Czechoslovakia and only 10% from other countries, from Germany, from Austria, from Denmark and from Hungary. And by the way, the Czechs, they were the majority, and as always, the majority oppressed the minority. And I had to learn very, very fast to speak Czech, to be on a better condition. So we were in a kinder home, and we were kept busy somehow. We couldn't learn, it was forbidden, obviously. The Czechian children, they could learn. We couldn't not, but we had people who took, let's say, care for us and kept us busy. So this was, and when I reached the age of 13, I had to begin to work. And then I was, I don't know how you call it in English, a run boy, to bring orders from one place to another place, and it was connected with food. So I had was in position to get something more to eat and even to bring something to my parents.
And see, how did your parents manage not to be put onto the transport?
Yes, sure, of 2 reasons. My mother worked all the 2 years in a factory for the German Luftwaffe, for the German Air Forces, so she was not sent. And my father was a tailor. the only Jewish tailor in all Germany, that he was a master. So they took him immediately to make the uniforms for the SS. So he was not taken also. This was our luck.
And can I ask you, see, how come they decided to send the train to Switzerland? It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. So the story is very simple. Himmler became cold legs, and he was in contact with a man. He was once the president of Switzerland, and later he was the financial minister, and they both came in contact with the Orthodox Jewish family in Canada, who paid 5 million Swiss francs on the bank, and with this money they should buy medicines for the Waffen-SS, and this was a way that he bought us 1,200. He wanted to buy 500,000, but there was other men in the same charge like Himmler, and he went to Hitler and he told him this story about this, and Hitler became crazy, and because he needed still Himmler, but all the Germans, they took part in this business, were hanged. So this was the first and the last transport.
And how did your parents get on? Because they could have thought maybe this is a deception. How did they know that it was going to really take to Switzerland?
They didn't know, but because my father worked for the SS, maybe that he heard something, that he knew something, and this was the reason that we volunteered.
And going into Switzerland and having freedom, it must have been the most incredible experience.
Okay, so when we were under those 6 weeks closed, somebody said I was the only child. And they said, let's check the boy if he's healthy, because in Dreisenstadt was typhus and other things. They figured out that I'm healthy, and they let me out, only me. And that was first time in my life free. And the people asked me, you are the child of Dreisenstadt? And I said, yes. How was it? And when I told, no one believed. Because it was still 3 months before the end of the war. So I said I will not speak anymore. And then a man from the Jewish agency met me and asked me if I want to go to Palestine. I said, what shall I do there? Then he said, okay, you can go to a kibbutz. I asked him, what is a kibbutz? Oh, he said, it's a nice place that girls and boys are working together, learning together, singing together, dancing together. And I told him that it sounds nice, but I'm 14 years old and I cannot decide on myself. You have to talk with my parents and you have to wait until the quarantine will be over. And then later he met my parents, and we didn't know who is alive from the family. We couldn't go home, we had no home. And we were allowed to stay in Switzerland only half a year. So he convinced that when they will send me to the Jewish Aliyah house, they can legally come to Palestine with a certificate. So they sent me to this youth aliyah heim, and we went on a boat and traveled an English military ship. They brought us to Palestine.
Did you go with your parents?
Together with my parents. And
On a British military boat?
yes, because it was legally not included in the white book.
In the white paper, so it was no illegal immigration, this was, you had the certificate?
And we came, and a lot of speech we didn't understand nothing, but there were fruits and food and so, and then we came to Athlete, and the next morning a man came and he asked me, "What's your name?" And I said, "Horst Cohen." And he said, "Do you have a Jewish name?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Herschele." And he said, "Herschele, it's Hirsch. Hirsch in Hebrew is Tzvi. And here we don't say Cohen, here we say Cohen. So from today you will be Tzvi Cohen." And the next day he took only me, because it was of the youth aliyah. And then the next day we arrived on the 1st of September 45, 4 months after the end of the war. And on the 2nd September I came to Kibbutz Mabarot. And since then I am here 70, 80 years already. And meanwhile I have 4 children, 6 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. And my brother was born here, lives here with me together at the same kibbutz, and he has 5 children and 4 grandchildren, and we are together every day.
Tzvi, it is unbelievable. Can you show the picture of your parents, your very, very special parents?
These are my parents.
They were very courageous. They were very...
I lived with them together here in the kibbutz 40 years. And
you have a picture of your brother. And Tzvi, you mentioned that you asked him, if you could just relate how you asked your mother that you want to have a brother or a sister.
And this is me and my brother.
What is his name?
The average between us, not the average, the gap between us is 16 years.
16 years.
16 years from the same father and from the same mother. But he was born with blonde hair and blue eyes, and his 5 kids have blonde hair and blue eyes, and his grandchildren have blue eyes and blonde hair. So he's a typical Arik type.
Now you mentioned, and if you could also relate, that you asked your mother that you wanted to have a brother or a sister.
Yes.
And your mother made you a promise.
She promised me. And in 46 I went to her, Mama, you promised me something. And in 47 he was born. And this is the victory, my victory against the Nazi.
It's incredible. It really is, and that is the victory. And Tzvi, can I ask, have you gone back to Germany? I know you have in that picture that you did
many times.
You've taken
I went
groups with?
together with my brother. I am still today afraid to go by myself to Germany. So I say that he is my bodyguard, but not for my safety, for my psychology. I need him to be with me, to strengthen me, because after when I am telling my story, I am really exhausted. And
it brings back all the memories, all the
Yes.
pain. And
Yeah, so I went with him many years, at least 2 times to Germany until the Corona.
And did you go to Theresienstadt as well? Have you ever been back to Theresienstadt?
Yes, yes. I went with groups together. They all went with me to the river, the place where I poured the ashes. Yes.
And Tzvi, can I just ask, going back to Berlin and going back to Theresienstadt, is it extremely emotional when you go back?
Yes, the first time it was very fearing. I felt, I asked my father if he allowed me to go back to Germany. And he said, I give you my permission, because my mother died already, she was passed away, but you must go to the place where we started our life. So I did it. I went to this place, and I went to the place where my grandfather was in Sachsenhausen, and I have seen what they have done to him. So
They had to, with the sand, they had to...
they had to do a terrible thing. They had to walk 12 hours on a special way where every few meters there were other stones and sand and water and so, and they had to figure out which leather is the best for the boots for the German army. And when they figured out which leather is the best, all the boots of the German army were made from this leather, but it was not enough, because when a German soldier get new boots, he get blisters on his feet, and the German soldier cannot afford to have blisters. So everyone from the prisoners has to go with the boots until they were not completely new. And then a certain German soldier became these boots. And this was the reason that he told me when I was 7 years old in 1938, after he was released from Sachsenhausen, that they killed my legs. I was 7 years old and couldn't understand him. And only 45 years later, when I came the first time to Germany, and I went to this place, and I made this turn without that somebody hit me, my legs hurt.
And Tzvi, do you remember Kristallnacht?
For sure, for sure. I was 7 years old, and I could hear how the SA and the SS went on the street and sung, "We are only happy when the blood of the Jews is on our knives." I could hear it, and I was 7 years old. And they took my grandfather at the same night, and this night they burned all the Bate Knesset in all Germany, and they broke all the windows of the Jewish shops and all. And because of the streets were full with glass, they call it the night of broken glass. Yes.
And when you go back to Berlin, is it difficult with the memories of what you saw?
At the very first time, it was very hard, very hard. And I got used to. I went many times. Years after years, 2 or 3 times to Germany to tell them my story.
And you've spoken to German youth as well?
Also to German Jews, of sure, but mostly I speak on universities and schools and so on.
In Germany?
All in German.
And your German?
German is my mother language.
And Tzvi, what happened to the rest of your family? Do you know what happened to the
yes,
family?
I knew it after many years. Only after many years that all the side of my father, his parents and all his brothers, all were killed in Auschwitz. All the family, all. And how we figured it out, they were hidden in Berlin. Now, because of the attacks of the air forces of America and that, every apartment needed in front of the door a pail with water and a pail with sand, that if there is a fire, that they could use it. And you think a full house, or everyone has this, so sometimes it could help. And they were hidden, and my father didn't know, because he didn't want to know where they are hidden. His parents and his 3 brothers and 1 baby. And he put money on the bottom of the pail, and at night one of his brothers came and took the money out from them. And one day they didn't take it out, and next day they didn't take it out, and then my father knew that those who hid them, they went to the Gestapo and said, we have Jews here, and then they took them all family, all together. And this I knew only about 40 years ago, before, not until the book of the dead Jewish people, 56,000 Jewish dead people. There is a book, and there I found the names, and they found the date when they were sent to Auschwitz. This is such a big book.
And Tzvi, have you ever gone to Auschwitz? Have you ever been to Auschwitz? Have you visited Auschwitz?
Yes, I was in all the camps, in Auschwitz and Majdanek, and with groups as a witness.
And what happened to your mother's family? On your
My mother's family, except my grandparents, her parents, who perished away in Theresienstadt, everyone was safe, could escape from Germany immediately after the 9th of November of 1938. So they are all alive.
So they escaped after Kristallnacht?
Yes, after Kristallnacht they escaped, and they also had a story because her sister went to China, to Shanghai, and the two brothers went to Palestine then, and one brother went to Belgium. But Belgium was captured by the German, but they survived because their son was in the resistance, and His wife was in Auschwitz. 4 years Auschwitz, not Birkenau, Auschwitz. And there was one couple, she liked her, and she saved her life. And after the end of the war, my cousin went to Auschwitz and found her there. And they got married and they went to the United States. So that I have a family in the United States. But all this we figured out after years. Because you must know, in the first 10 years of Israel, every day 1 hour in the radio program, they called names who are alive. And so you could figure out that you have family alive. And then we figured out, we had a real first cousin of my father was in a ma'abara. You know what a ma'abara is? In Kfar Yona. It's about 4 kilometers from here. We didn't know. Then she went and she lived 7 years in Yafo. And then she went to the United States. And only when she met a person of our family Shama, then we figured out that she is alive. It took about 12 years until we knew that she is alive. And then we traveled to meet her and so on.
And that meeting must have been unbelievable when you met her.
Yes,
and Tzvi, I just have to ask you, when you came here and you were young when you came to Israel.
I was 14 years old.
You went to school?
I went to school, but the first year we had to learn Hebrew. We didn't know. In my group here in the school, we were 28 children, all from the Holocaust, from 8 different countries. So we couldn't speak within us, and we couldn't speak with the children here. So the only first year we worked only on Hebrew, that we could keep contact each other and also with the children of the kibbutz. And then we learned 2 years and we reached 48. And then I fought in the Independence War. And
growing up, could you speak to your other children, or could you speak to your parents about what happened in the Shoah?
My parents, they knew what happened.
But did you speak to them a lot about it?
We spoke a lot about it, all in German.
But you did speak, and they were open to you speaking.
The worst thing was that they didn't believe us here in the country.
That's what I wanted to ask. What about your friends? Or
we didn't speak about nothing.
Because they didn't believe?
Only after the trial of Eichmann. Only then they began to believe. Here was a group in Kibbutz Maborot, a Jewish youth group. They came 1939 to Kibbutz Maborot. And when I arrived, we spoke German. They didn't believe me. And then years I didn't speak. Years. And the first time that I spoke, it was in 1984. 40 years after the Holocaust.
And with your children, you didn't speak to...
No. Only after 84. So...
And what was the impetus?
It
What
was
made...
an Independence Day, and I was asked to tell about my past. And the people who heard me were complete. And then they figured out that when I'm telling my story, people listen and believe. And then in 86, for Yad Vashem, I made my first video cassette. And then later on I made the 4 hours video cassette with, what is his name? Spielberg. And later on they took me as a witness of Yad Vashem, and I spoke the power, to the military, to the police, and every year I meet all the highest people. Yesterday in the television was about Nadav Argaman, the man, he was 5 years the head of the Shabak. I met him personally, first with the head of the Shabak, and then he ordered me to come to his office to speak to all his team at his home. I can show you what I have got from him.
Very special. Wow. It's from Medinat Israel. Very special. Tzvi, what a...
And here you can see all the
certificates.
All the certificates.
Tzvi, I'm going to ask you a big favor. I'm going to ask you a big favor. You played the harmonica, which saved your life. And you played the death marches, and by playing... They waited, and then your parents came, and that really did save your life. Can you play, and it will be amazing, Hatikva on the harmonica?
No, because this harmonica is dur, and no, but I can play Maus too.
So that's wonderful. That would be also wonderful, because that's Hanukkah, and that's also it's. Marrakesh, it's so special. Tzvi, thank you so much. And Tzvi, I want to ask you, what message do you give to your children and grandchildren and to the future generations?
Never again. We must be aware that we are not wanted. Not here on this place, because all the Arabs around, they only want to throw us in the sea. And not the Goyim all around, because there's a lot of anti-Semitism in the world. So we have to be strong. And we have to do everything to avoid that something will happen again.
Such a part, never again. Yeah. And so you are the example. You went through harrowing experiences, and you saw the rebirth of the State of Israel, and you fought for the State of Israel.
Yes, I fought in the war, and in the war I was also in the war of 67 and also in the war of 73. I was the commander of the Kibbutz Mabarot, the military commander of the kibbutz.
So Tzvi, I want to thank you. For me, this has been the greatest honor and privilege. I'm so grateful to you, Tzvi. There are no words. There really are no words. You are an example. You are an icon. Something we can all aspire to emulate. I am just in awe. I really am. You are the epitome of Gibor. You really are, and I'm exceptionally grateful to you.
Thank you.
And you should just have mazel and bracha and have nachas from your family and your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
I have big nachas from my family. I meet them every Shabbat and every holiday, and I am a happy man.
Tzvi, you are amazing. You are an incredible person, and it's amazing, from the harmonica, which is such a beautiful instrument that saved your life. You really are such a joy, and you exude just happiness, and it's unbelievable. And it's been the greatest honor and privilege to meet you. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
So Tzvi, here is your book, and here's a picture of you and your mother. How old were you? In
4 years. As a little boy, but I don't see the picture. See, just here I was 11 years old. Here is my first day in Israel, when we arrived in Israel. It was in the 4th of September 1945.
With your parents, wow. And the picture at the bottom?
Here I am 1.5 years old, and here I am 6 years old.
And Tzvi, can I ask you, these pictures are so, they are so precious. How did you save the pictures, and how did you save the picture of
I will tell you, we didn't have any pictures, nothing. But my cousin, he escaped in 1938 to Belgium. He had all the family pictures. And then later on he went to the United States. And when I visited him in the United States, he gave me all the pictures of our family.
And before that you didn't have the pictures?
We went to Theresienstadt without any pictures. Nothing. We had nothing left. So our past was lost. And only in 62, when we went first to the United States, we have got the pictures.
And Tzvi, this is the book that you wrote in Hebrew.
Yes.
That's incredible. Thank you. And when you saw the pictures, it must have been also so, here you see your grandmother and your grandfather. Sure. And this wonderful book that you wrote in Hebrew, with this This is a very special picture. And you're outside the Beit Knesset, the main synagogue.
Yes.
And you've written it in German as well. How old are you in the picture?
Here?
Yeah.
Here I'm 16 years old. In Israel. And
it's very special.
And here I am old already.
You're never old. You sure? It's wonderful. Tzvi, thank you so much.
I have had in 1943 in Theresienstadt on a Boydem my bar mitzvah, and the main rabbi from Denmark, he held the ceremony and he blessed me in Theresienstadt. That was the first time in my life that I was blessed by a rabbi, and the second time was by a comer of the German, and he blessed me also after he had heard my life story. It's from the community of Beit El, who are living close to Zichron Yaakov. There are about 900 German people. They are all very, very religious, and they are in good contact with Beit Terezin and also with our army. The district of Emekrefer is in contact with a German city. It's called Siegen, and all the time, every year, a group of German kids are coming to Israel, to Beit Theresienstadt, and a group from here is going to Siegen. And I meet all the German groups who are coming to Beit Theresienstadt, and I tell them my story. And I was also with my brother together in Siegen, and we met there many people, and I told to many people there my story. I had in Frankfurt connected with the football organization DBF and DFB, and I had a speech in Frankfurt in Palmengarten. I told a part of my story, and then I get a letter that there were 9.1 million people who listened to my story.
That's incredible. It's incredible. You are an inspiration to all of us. You really are. Thank you so much, and you should just have Mazel Brocha and Admei Vesrim in good health. Wow. Tzvi, Bemet, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you very, very much, and it's so precious.
תודה. תודה. שיהיה בברכה חמה.
Thank you so much.